So the other day I received this question. Is President Biden's $5.8 trillion tax plan, is this part of the Great Reset? Well, to address that, the answer is President Biden's $5.8 trillion tax plan is likely the Great Reset. Here's what we know. President Biden and Democrats have tried and tried to get the American people to pay more in taxes, right? Definitely, and most recently, they've gained more support from more lawmakers to increase the tax rate of the super wealthy. And even though many people fight against this, some say that this is what must be done. And even President Biden, when he released his $5.8 trillion budget, what you need to keep in mind, this is the largest tax hike in history with $2.5 trillion in tax increases. That's substantial. That's a lot of money. Now, just to give you an idea of how substantial this is, okay, in 2021, the federal government spent $6.8 trillion. Okay, that amounts to $20,634 per person. Now, that also accounted for trillions of dollars in pandemic relief and COVID funding. $6.8 trillion that accounted for pandemic relief and COVID funding, stimulus checks to the American people, and then President Biden is proposing $5.8 trillion in his budget. That's a substantial move. Now, this is why many are calling President Biden's contributions to the Great Reset. These are his contributions. And this is causing a lot of concern. But one of the things you need to keep in mind is that the reason why the Biden administration and Democrats are targeting billionaires is because over the past 2 years of this pandemic, billionaires have profited more than ever before. And estimates show that the wealth of billionaires jumped more than $5 trillion in the past 2 years. And the top 10 richest people in the United States, they have more than doubled their net worth just because of this. Reports also indicate that they made about $1.3 billion per day. Per day. That's a large chunk of change. Now, here's what lawmakers are targeting. Lawmakers want to target billionaires and large corporations because they want to see the wealthiest individuals in our country pay to fund things like healthcare and healthcare systems, pay for vaccines for the United States and the rest of the world. They want to fight discrimination. They want to fund new social programs and stabilize existing ones. And obviously they want to address the overall climate crisis. That's what we're hearing. Now, although many economists are projecting that passing a $5.8 trillion budget would only compound the current economic problems, President Biden says no, this is not the case. And President Biden even said, let me read this. Critically, my budget would also keep our nation on a sound fiscal course. It fights inflation and helps families deal with rising costs by growing our economy, making more goods in America, and lowering the costs families face. Its bold ideas are fully paid for with tax reforms that more than offset the cost of new investments. That's what he said. Now, is this true? Yes, this is true. This bill would be fully paid for, and it would be paid for by the wealthiest individuals and largest corporations in our country. He also said it would help fight inflation. Now, is that true? Can you still print more money and fight inflation at the same time? Well, no. That actually makes the problems worse. But this is also another problem that has been brought up multiple times. And one of the questions people have asked is, if large corporations are going to be paying more in taxes, then wouldn't they try to push the lost revenue over to the consumers? Yeah. The answer is yes. They will do that. They've already stated they will do that. That if they are taxed more, well, they don't want to lose profit, so they're going to increase their prices in order to make the same amount of money to make the shareholders happy, right? That's what we're going to see. But what you need to keep in mind is that the purpose of the Great Reset is really an attempt to consolidate much of the nation's, or really the world's, wealth and redistribute that wealth back into more social causes, into education, into healthcare, and to the Democratic agenda. And I know what you're thinking. Well, I'm not a billionaire, so how's this even going to impact me? It's not going to affect me. Well, here's the truth. The truth is that taxes normally start off by just going after the higher income earners. That's the way really taxes started. But it doesn't actually take long before Congress makes a few changes that they deem necessary to actually increase revenue to pay for another provision or another bill, right? Another social program. And after a while, what happens is everybody's paying more in taxes. They just start with the select few, and then it eventually goes to more and more people. This is kind of the same thing when we talk about universal basic income, or these guaranteed payment programs. Is it starts with a small pilot group, 50, 1,000, 5,000 people, and then eventually it goes to more and more people because they see, oh, it's kind of working, so let's just put more money into it. And there is some talks about additional things like this. There's discussions where if it's helping, why don't we just continue to do it? But one thing I can tell you, and if there's one thing we know about great resetters, is that they want to make sure everybody starts pretty much at the same level, at the same place. Many people say this is the bottom, but some people call this being fair. Other people say that no, this is just another way to attack people with assets and money. Now, right now, the big tax that is being discussed, and I really want to address this, is something called unrealized capital gains. Now, these are gains that you would get from an asset, such as a stock, a business, crypto, even real estate. Let's say you own a house and you buy it for $200,000. Again, if you can find a house for $200,000, great. If not, don't worry. You buy a house for $200,000. And then 2 years later, or 10 years later, it's now appraised at $400,000. So $200,000 in unrealized capital gains. Well, what the government wants to do is tax you on those unrealized capital gains. So let's say they tax you 20%. You would have to pay $40,000 on something that you haven't sold, you haven't got any profit from. You have to pay that. What if you don't have any money? Well, then you are stuck with, well, I have to sell the house. I have to sell that asset. So really what unrealized capital gains is forcing people to do is sell their assets so that they have nothing. And that's not the world that we live in. Now, even though this plan is unlikely to pass, and simply due to the fact that Congress and many lawmakers are questioning whether or not this is even constitutional. And some say that this aligns with the Great Reset too much to ignore. And it does. If we go and tax unrealized capital gains, whether it's on a business, stocks, real estate, right, or crypto, that creates an issue. Yeah, it's going to put more money back into the pot, which then the Biden administration and Democrats can distribute the money as they wish, or in some cases. But that's the issue is this $5.8 trillion tax plan that President Biden has. Many are saying this is the Great Reset. So just keep in mind that some of these things that we're going to see over the next 6 to 8 months, and the reason I say 6 to 8 months is because that is when the election is happening. I think the election happens in like 7 months, the midterm elections. It's going to be big because if Democrats win, we're going to see there's more and more of a push for different provisions, different social programs, and different things to spend money on. But it also could increase our taxes. So just keep that in mind. Now, one thing I do want to say is that there's a lot of things changing. But the one thing that hasn't changed is Democrats are still trying to push the same Build Back Better Act, same Build Back Better agenda, President Biden's economic agenda, his plan. They're still trying to push that. So as we get more and more reports on what's actually going on, I promise I'll fill you in on all the latest news and updates. Just want to thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.